Tevin Coleman to the end, to the sideline.
Yeah, I mean, they can hit you in so many different ways. When Jimmy's playing the way he's playing, whether it be on schedule or off schedule plays, that running game is always going to be there.
Was that a first down? Kingsbury decides to challenge it. Almost no way they were going to overturn that, and they don't. So the Cardinals lose a timeout. Niners another chance to run it out. Here's your ball game on a 3rd and 9. Is Garoppolo going to run for it? No, he's not. He's going to dump it off.
Look, that's just a great job of pushing up in the pocket, making the defense kind of commit to you a little bit. Jimmy's not going to run. He's going to throw it every time.
They never give it back, and they stay unbeaten.
He's pretty good. I don't know why people don't think he is. He makes some pretty gutsy throws out there, doesn't he? Goodness gracious. I can't say enough about just how he brings us along, just whether it's on the sideline or in the huddle, and, the leadership that he has, but the fire that he, has too, he gets the people going. And just to see him, make those plays and, allow him to get those people off his back that, say, hey, maybe he's not, what we think he is. But, everyone in this building or in our locker room knows what he is. It's fun to see that.
Garoppolo, a big night, and he's got a new favorite weapon, and that's Emmanuel Sanders. In the last 2 games, Garoppolo's already matched his touchdown total, targeting wide receivers, and Sanders' 100-yard receiving game yesterday was the first by a Niners wide receiver all year. Garoppolo, again, over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. So what are you seeing, Bobby Carpenter, in this offense right now?
I'm seeing a quarterback that looks confident. I'm watching offensive coordinator / head coach in Kyle Shanahan that is beginning to craft an offense to the skill set of his players. They brought in Emmanuel Sanders. That helped a lot, but you see how quickly they get the ball out of his hand and how well Jimmy Garoppolo is doing it. He's accurate. He looks like Aaron Rodgers throwing some of those slants. He's been getting the ball out quickly, and in doing that, it allows the run after the catch, and they have some elite athletes both at the tight end position and at the wide receiver now that can make those big plays.
Yeah, you look at what's happened in Atlanta since Kyle Shanahan left there, and their offense has really sort of fallen off the face of the earth. Mark, what are you seeing in Garoppolo? He hits that back foot, and the ball is coming out immediately.
He really does, and Lewis nailed it on the head. When you attack vertically in the pocket and you scare that defense, you attract the rush, you attract those linebackers dropping in coverage, and then throw the ball, it's dangerous. And give John Lynch some credit for getting him a new weapon in Sanders. This is huge. He's had his eye on him since Denver. John Lynch obviously knows Denver very well. That's a huge addition for them. Going to help them down the stretch.
The Emmanuel Sanders acquisition could wind up being the most significant thing that happened around the trade deadline as we saw what he means for this team. But obviously, Lewis, when we talk about the 49ers, it really begins with their defense.
Yeah, look, the defensive line is driving the bus here. That is the engine for sure. Their defensive line coach is probably their number 1 acquisition that they made last year, a guy named Chris Kosarek. He is a Jim Washburn disciple. I watched them out in the joint practices out in Denver when San Francisco was practicing against them. He was getting after these guys in a way you just don't usually see in pro football. But now, it has become like muscle memory for these guys out on the football field. Look at how they run and chase the ball. Look at the fury with which they chase down passers. That's because that's how he has conditioned them to play. And they, without a doubt, have made the secondary better. Richard Sherman has admitted the secondary is better because of this D-line, because of the D-line play. And Chris is a major reason why. Robert Saleh, look, the defensive coordinator, for as much credit as he gets, the next guy who they should be mentioning, Chris Kosarek, the defensive line coach.
And right alongside him, maybe Nick Bosa. I have the mayor of Columbus, Ohio, sitting next to me. I've had Nick Bosa. Say whatever you will, whatever happened last year where he sat out those games, that guy is unbelievable.
When you mentioned him sitting out, and I think that's part of the reason why people forgot how good he was. You just didn't have a sample size last year where you're watching him, where like people look at Chase Young at Ohio State now, and you see how great he's playing. You look at his brother, Joey. I mean, these guys were both players of the week last week. They're so good. He's so skilled. He has all the athleticism you need. And, you match him up with Chris Kosarek right there. He's getting the most out of him.
So they stay unbeaten. On the other side, Bosa, the number 2 pick. Obviously, Kyler Murray, the number 1 pick. A quick moment on them. He comes in there. The coach comes in there. They were the worst team in football last year. They had the first pick for a reason. What are you seeing right now in him?
I think you're seeing him play within the context of that offense exactly how they had envisioned. Look, he's a guy who's a dual run pass threat. They need a bit stronger running game. The running backs were not healthy last night, so he really was one-dimensional. Although Kenyon Drake looks like that's a heck of a pickup for them. They need to build out the offensive line, continue to fortify the defense, which right now, look, you can score on it at will. Pat Peterson looked like a guy who last night hadn't played in a while. So they need some work. But the future is Kyler Murray, and they're going to be just fine.
What do you see from quarterback size?
Much better than I expected, right? I think we can all agree on that. I didn't know what to expect from Arizona. They were one of the worst teams in the league last year. But it seems like their offense is like just enough to get you within a couple points right now. They got to pick up a couple players and, like you said, boost up that offensive line and give them a chance.
He's doing it with a terrible offensive line. They have a bunch of injuries. So far, so good. But for the 49ers right now, that looks like potentially a Super Bowl team. We'll talk much more about them. Meanwhile, it's hard to know exactly what to say about this. Speaking publicly for the first time since ending his holdout yesterday, Trent Williams revealed he's been dealing with a cancerous growth on his head. According to him, the Redskins first treated him 6 years ago. He was told the growth was, quote, minor. Then this offseason, the team encouraged him to get further treatment, and that's when he was diagnosed with a rare cancer. Williams says now he doesn't trust the team anymore.
I mean, the lump continued to grow over the years, and I mean, it was concerning, but it was no pain involved. And, you know, if I'm being told by the very people who, you know, I put my career in the hands of, they're telling me that I'm fine, then I'm fine. You know, that's how I looked at it. They kind of underestimated it, and it was far more advanced than they had realized. And I don't think they realized how long it was there. It's a lot of emotions. I'm not gonna lie and say it wasn't. It's a ton of emotions, you know. I almost lost my life.
I even got you a bag.
Like, seriously, like, I almost lost my life. Like, it was no, you 30, coming off 7 straight Pro Bowl, and the doctor tell you to get your affairs in order. It's not gonna sit well with you know, and it still doesn't. And it's still, even thinking about it, it's a scary thing to go through. You know, think of how you can describe to your 9-year-old, 5-year-old that, you know, daddy might not be here. So it's tough.
Everything about that was so strange, for lack of a better word. The Redskins released this statement that says the Washington Redskins have requested that the NFL's Management Council convene a joint committee with the NFLPA to review the medical records and the medical care given to Trent Williams. The Redskins continue to prioritize the health and well-being of our players and staff. Due to health care and privacy regulations, we are unable to comment further at this time. We look forward to the joint committee's results. So, again, we're getting into an area here that's very difficult to understand exactly what to say and how to parse it. Almost feels like we should just let that side of it work itself out when we have all of the information. Then perhaps we can draw some conclusions. But from a football standpoint, it still does not make sense to me, and Lewis, with your front office background, that this is a guy who has made it clear he will not play for them. He is a valuable asset, and they did not trade him.
Yeah, it is tough to understand why, what they were trying to prove, what the agenda was as far as not moving him along, when clearly this relationship, I don't want to say it's not recoverable, because I don't necessarily believe it is not recoverable. I just think that there are certain factions within this football operation that Trent obviously does not trust. And if he doesn't trust, and there is valid reason for him not to trust him, then it's incumbent upon the owner and everyone else to kind of look into that area and go, hey, look, we have a franchise left tackle here. We played a lot of money, And if he has a valid complaint here, it's our duty to kind of look into it. And I think that's kind of indicative of what's going on here, big picture with this team. They need to get their affairs in order and get their details in order, because they're not right now.
You were in that locker room. What did you make of all of this?
Listen, he's one of the cornerstones of your team, and you know, not everybody's treated equally in an NFL locker room, but everybody's treated fairly. If you're a 7-time Pro Bowler, cornerstone of your team, either figure it out quickly or eliminate these kind of comments, this kind of interview, like just nip this thing in the bud and split up and go your separate ways before this, or figure it out quickly and save the egg on your face. You know, that's what I would have said.
Yeah, and so 6 years ago, you could hear the pain in his voice talking about it. I mean, there's some sort of misdiagnosis. How they handled it here obviously wasn't to his standards. The question that I'm trying to figure out with the Redskins is why they're even having this conversation now. Earlier in the season, they could have gotten pretty good value for him in a trade.
Great value.
He made it sound there's emotions involved. He wasn't going to come back. He wasn't going to play. And they're a team that probably wasn't going to go anywhere. So I don't know why they wouldn't have moved on and got what they could have at that point.
Yeah, I really do think the bigger issue, though, is even before you get to the part of the discussion about trading him, what led to this point for the relationship to fall apart? And that is where somehow, some way, somebody's dropping the ball. As simple as that. Players don't say those kind of things unless they have an issue somewhere. Now, how far this issue goes, how deep it goes, we'll find out. As you said, you got to let a lot of facts come out. Yeah. But, man, I mean, there's a problem here, you know, kind of structurally that the powers that be need to get their hands around quickly.
We did our best to edit that interview so that you could get a real sense, but it was lengthy and it was surreal to have a player in an NFL locker room and you can hear sort of the jovial guys around, talk, and he's talking about having to get his affairs in order and tell his 2 little kids. It is a surreal circumstance in Washington. Again, there is obviously a lot more there to unpack, and we'll see where it goes. Meanwhile, a much more standard sort of mess, if you will, is the one in Cleveland, where the quarterback both for his play on the field and some of the things he said off. The Browns, meanwhile, are off to a very disappointing 2-5 start. But yesterday, wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. came to the spirited defense of his quarterback.
You can't sit here and say it's all on him. You know what I mean? We have to take a look at everything that's going on around him. And obviously he has to play better. I have to play better. Jarvis has to play better. Chubbs, we all have to do better. We all need to do better. You can't sit there and be like it's Baker's fault. Like, I feel like that's the easiest thing for us to do. And I've been in situations, where one person's getting the blame and the rest of the people are quiet, just to kind of stay out of the fire. Like, I'm going to jump in the fire with them. I'll be the first one.
I'd love to have been with Eli Manning watching that interview taking place. Having just said that, I mean, Odell Beckham is the adult in the room all of a sudden in Cleveland.
I wish this would have came from Baker. Like, that sometimes as the quarterback, even if you don't know, go out there and fake it if you have to for the media. Put it on autopilot and just say, listen, we're not playing well. It starts with me. I got to get better. I got to take care of the football. Just wear it for a second. Even if you don't believe some of those things, it's just they have so many, chirpings, right? It's like an aviary over there. Every week it's something.
I like that analogy. Here's the thing. Contrary to that, what people will say is he has to be authentically himself, and if he isn't authentically himself, he's trying to be himself and be an NFL quarterback, and no one has ever done it quite that way before. Can he do it?
You know what's interesting? See, nobody cares how authentic you are in sports.
If you're losing,
because then you're just an authentic loser.
Yeah.
So congratulations. Win some games, and all of a sudden people then will kind of champion you for your authenticness. Right. They will champion you for being someone who kind of will speak their mind and have a big chip on your shoulder. When you're losing, you know what it becomes? You start sounding like a crybaby, like a whiner, like you're always sitting there going, "Oh, I got to play better. Oh, I got to pick up the pace. Oh, we got to cut out the mistakes." Well, no kidding. That's when the focus shifts from having hope to expectations, which is what happened to this team in the offseason. This is what comes along with it. We said before the season started, they're going to hit a bump in the road. Well, now they've hit like Mount Everest in the road. So Freddie Kitchens, all you guys, win some games, and then all of a sudden we won't have these discussions.
Exactly.
Well, it's that simple.
And there's obviously massive issues there. The one thing that I will say for Baker in his defense, you have your star receiver now. We're talking about Eli Manning. Odell Beckham never went up to the podium and sat there and defended his quarterback in New York like this. So regardless of everything Baker's saying, all the heat that he's taking, and this is a guy in Odell Beckham Jr. who hasn't really been targeted. He hasn't had the production this year that he has in years past. And so for him to go up there and take those bullets and defend his quarterback in that way leads me to believe still that Baker Mayfield has the locker room. He has the support of those guys. Because once that erodes, Louis, Mark, you guys know as well as anybody.
I agree.
If you're not behind your quarterback and he's talking all the time, then it can get real rough in a hurry.
The quarterback was the first pick in the draft. He's not going anywhere for a while. The coach, meanwhile, is right now a young coach whose team commits penalty after penalty and turns the ball over all the time. That really seems to me like where the question is.
It's getting hot in Freddie's kitchen, man. It's getting hot.
That's where a change is going to happen. You can't be this sloppy and have people talking about your foot. Because what you did was you raised the expectations of the fan base. You raised the expectations of the owner. You have raised the expectations of the general manager. Everyone expected them to win. I expected them to win. And when you play sloppy football like this, sloppy, and then you play football that kind of looks like, do you understand what kind of personnel you have? Do you understand you can't run 7-step drops with that offensive line, that left tackle, when Greg Robinson was starting? It's like, what are you doing? People lose jobs over that, and people are going to lose jobs here if they don't turn it around fast.
And I'm so glad you went there. And I had a conversation with the head coach in the NFL. You don't get fired for the wins and losses. Right. You get fired for failing to meet expectations. Because it's how perceptually good they believe you should be. They think you're an 8-win team, you win 9, that's great. They think you're a 10-win team and you win 8, you're getting fired.
I think you said it exactly right. Hope went to expectation. Right. They also did so much talking. They bring a lot of attention
Some
on
of this
themselves.
is self-inflicted. No doubt.
What is the one thing?
A lot of it is.
It says in New England's locker room, every day when you walk in and walk out, ignore the noise and manage expectations.
So let's get to a team that really nothing bad ever gets said, no controversy, no nothing. Let's talk about the New York Jets. Le'Veon Bell cleared the air with head coach Adam Gase yesterday after he expressed frustration with his lack of involvement in the offense in the Jets' loss at Jacksonville this past weekend. Here's what Bell had to say yesterday.
I expressed the way I felt, to Coach Gase and, things like that. We had a good little talk, because I just feel like, I want to be a main reason as to helping the team win. I don't like, not being used and, we end up losing the game. You know what I'm saying? So I felt like I couldn't really help my team out.
Now, I want to first say, Le'Veon Bell has handled this whole season great. What has been a disaster of a season, he has handled it, I think, well, both on and off the field. That said, Mark, you brought up an interesting question. Why are we hearing any of this?
And that's the difference, I think, that he's learning in New York versus Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's like an in-house kind of place. You got something to say, you go talk to Coach Tomlin, you hash it out, and nothing really gets said. They've protected a lot of things. We've seen Antonio Brown come out of there, and they probably had to cover up some stuff. So you get to a place like this, and you say, oh, yeah, I was texting back and forth with Coach. Boom. That's front page of the Daily News, New York Post. Like, it's everywhere. So he's adjusting to that. But same thing you said. Why do we even know that? Okay, you're unhappy. Go talk to Coach and figure it out.
You know what? Well, look, when you're credible, you're competent, and you're positively impacting others. Those are the three things I talk about all the time when you're talking about leaders. When you have those three things going for you, people don't stand up there at press conferences. I don't care if you're in New York. I don't care if you're in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. They don't stand up there and start talking about, well, I texted my coach and told him I was unhappy and I wasn't being used. Right. You just kind of keep your mouth shut and you think about the team because you respect the leadership. Yeah. What does that tell you about what's going on in New York? What did it tell you about what's going on in New York when you hear Kalichi Osemele talk about how he was treated? Whether or not you believe him or you believe the Jets management side about, the whole situation with his shoulder, there's a problem there. And it's a problem with respect as far as the leadership is concerned.
Well, let's make sure everyone knows what you're talking about, okay? Kalichi Osemele felt he needed shoulder surgery. He had a doctor who told him he did. He got surgery on his shoulder while the Jets were still fining him as an unexcused absence. And when asked about the conversations that he's had with the player, Adam Gase said he's had no conversation.
He's had no conversation. He said he knows where I am. He can come find me. And people were like, well, he's one of your players. Why haven't you talked to him about it? I'm trying to win a football game. I'm worried about the guys. It's just like, don't give us that. That to me sounds like absent leadership right there, that this team is devoid of it, and that's why things are going haywire now. Everyone's complaining. Everyone's letting the cat out of the bag, so to speak.
And see, you guys are talking about Adam Gase as the head coach. Let's just talk about him for a second as an offensive coordinator, because that's what Le'Veon Bell was talking about, his utilization and where he's at in the offense. And if you watch him with Pittsburgh a couple years ago, 30 times over 2 years, they're lining up in the slot. They're lining him up out wide. They're utilizing all of his skills, not just as a running back, but as a receiver. And only 6 times this season he's lined up in anywhere but the home running back position, Lewis, right behind the quarterback. And so you look at this and you figure out, why in the heck aren't they trying to do more things with the guy you paid all this money?
You know what the tragedy of it is? You're both right. He's a bad offensive coordinator and he's a bad head coach. And that's why the Jets are a complete disaster. All right, we're just getting started on that cheerful note. As we continue this morning, Bill Belichick is the ultimate problem solver, but one of our guys says he won't be able to solve that guy.